Well, hey everybody, Dylan here, and welcome to the review for Survivor Series 2024. I don't have much to say except for sorry for being late to start this one off, so let's get right into it. The show starts off with shots of Vancouver, Canada. Then it shows the Tigers Arena where we're going to be at tonight as War Pigs by T-Pain plays. A little triggersome for me. I prefer the Aussie version, but I get it. It'd be kind of repetitive to play the same version every year, but it would be kind of like touching in a way. Whatever. Time flies by, and so does this comment. We see Team Bianca arriving, Team tongue twister. Team Liv arriving, LA Knight arriving, who was on the phone, Bloodline 2.0, Paul Heyman, CM Punk, Sammy and Jay doing bits, Roman and Jimmy all arriving just separately. Then Michael Cole says it's time for SummerSlam Wargames, and we get a video package, like I said, with the remix version of War Pigs. Not as good as last year's, but that's alright. Still, you know what I mean? Still a decent hype video. I like it. My favorite part's during all this, like, you get serious hype going on. You just get Tama going, yeah. Anyways, after we get that, we get the WWE Survivor Series presents opening guy. And this time we get Pyro in the middle of the ring. Hell yeah. It was so cool. They should have done it last year. I'm glad they did it this year. Corey Graves, with Michael Cole already mentioned, is our commentary team for this evening. They talk about the Wargame rules, which are the same rules as last year's. If you want to know those rules, just watch the review. I really don't feel like saying them again. I'm sorry. But anyway, it's all good now because it's time to go to war. Games. The cage is lowering to the arena. Pyro's going crazy. Songs going off. My lovely little doomsday sirens playing in the background. I'm hyped. You should be hyped. Yeah. Team Bianca this year consisting of her, Bayley, Io Sky, Naomi, and Rhea, which is the captain of the team, start things off. Bayley starts off the match for her team. I guess kind of repeating her starting off last year, I guess. Oh. After she went to the ring, Team Liv comes out. Her team consisting of her, Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton, and Candice LeRae. Nia starts off for Team Liv. It's a classic match style between Nia and Bayley, where Bayley's the little person, so to speak, and Nia's this big giant trying to kill her. It works out well. They go kind of slow during the beginning of the 5 minutes until about halfway through. Bayley does a top rope arm drag into a Frankensteiner. Popped me crazy. She then takes off her like, I call it protective shoulder piece, but it's more like just a piece of attire, and she uses it as a weapon on Nia, which sounds good in principle, and then when you do it, it kind of looks, no offense, it kind of looks lame. Until Nia takes it from her and then uses it on her, which commentary at least tries to cover for it by saying, like, ooh, you're getting hit with leather. And then I start thinking, like, oh, that's the same concept as getting hit with a belt. Okay, it would hurt. Nia puts Bayley on the steel middle somehow and throws her into the cage and does a hip toss into the cage and into that steel middle part to get the advantage on her until Naomi comes out. She comes out tossing in a toilet seat, which popped me. And then she's got this kind of like, the only way I described it is a glow-themed kendo stick that she ends up legit like striking Nia so hard that she breaks parts of it off on Nia. The crowd starts chanting happy birthday for Naomi, who came in with a hat. That was kind, awesome, and she ends up doing the clap back to acknowledge them. I appreciated that. I appreciate Naomi. I hope they do something with her. I think since she left and had this little indie run, I think she's gotten a whole lot better. Naomi and Bayley take the advantage for a bit until Nia takes the advantage. I didn't write down how she did, my B. She tries to put the toilet seat on Naomi and give her a stink face, but Naomi reverses it and does the same thing I just said. I love wrestling. Nia tries to take the advantage by being big giant. But they end up double suplexing her, and that leaves for Team Hill to have somebody to come to the ring to help out Nia for them to get the advantage. Tiffany tries to run to the ring to help her friend, but Candice cuts her off and gets in front of her. And she is the advantage point for her team, kind of playing up this whole thing that she's trying to befriend Nia, same reason why Tiffany was. Team Babyfaces tries to corner Nia and puts a chair across her until she screams out something and Candice ends up saving her. They clean out the Babyfaces until the Babyfaces takes control again somehow. They set up a double chair. This was Team Nia. They set up a double chair with a chair across both of those chairs. So 3 chairs total, but it's like a chair bridge, I guess. And Bayley corrects it, meaning she technically touched it last when she technically sets it up. And if you follow Wrestling 101, that'll tell you, if you set it up, you have to go through it. Which, yeah, that ends up happening to her. She ends up getting moonsaulted onto it by Candice. Whenever the 5 minutes pass, Bianca comes in for her team, brings out a fire hydrant and a table and a chair. She ends up using the chair on Candice. Candice tries something on her neck, but she ends up falling backwards and takes an Alabama slam in the corner instead. And when I said on her neck, I mean she's like sitting on it like electric chair position, but she's trying to fight out of it. Bianca and Nia fight over a chair until B ends up eating a chair shot in the face, basically. And she eats 10 fists in the corner. They bring up how somebody attacked Jade and they're trying to like conspiracize, trying to figure out who did it, if they're in the match right now, and what have you. So I appreciate that. Fast forward through some actions, and Tiffany ends up coming into the ring. She introduces a trash can and a garbage lid, which gets a little pop. Nia and her do double team moves, including a launch up into a clothesline, a backslide into a leg drop, a Samoan drop into a backbreaker, just to name a couple of them. Some guys keeps on whistling in the crowd, and it kind of takes me out of it for a moment. Stop it. Fast forward a bit, and Io comes into the ring, which House Dylan popped for, very much so. I'm an Io Sky supporter. That was a tongue twister for me, but here we are. She finds her own trash can, including a Io custom paint job, as I call it. She climbs to the top with it harnessed on her back. Her and Candice fight at the top for a little bit until Io reverses it with like a sunset flip off of her back to counter it. I don't know if she botched it or if this was part of the plan, but she then decides just to punch her down from the cage. She then dives onto her from the top, and I think it was the missile drop kick into the kick up into a flip. Gets a good crowd pop, and she does like the head point thing, and gets a good pop at Dylan's house too. I start clapping. Her and Tiffany had a sequence that made me honestly want a match between the two, like worse than anything. I think that would be so sick to see. She does the like knees to the corner, which I learned are called the bullet train, until not. I think she does them and then like does the whole like point at her head taunt thing, and then Nia comes by and flattens her. Fast forward through the match a little bit, and Raquel comes out and she pulls out a table and then just drops it because the crowd's like, yeah, bring the table in. She said, nope, ain't doing that. She drops it, gets a little bit of heat on her. She takes out some of the faces, does like the big security guard roll, and then her and Nia take out the rest of the faces. Fast forward through the match a little bit, then Rhea comes out, and she's in a 4-on-1 situation. However, will she beat the odds? She tries to bring the table into the ring, but Raquel stops her by grabbing it. They have a little tug of war for a second until Rhea uses the table to smack Raquel right in the face with it. She comes into the ring, and she tries to clear out the ring, but it doesn't work until the faces get up, and they end up clearing out the ring. They do a bunch of awesome spots with weapons. Honestly, like if I, again, add to the highlight reel, a lot of these things. There's one where the women are just running at the side of the rings, like each like heels on one side, babyfaces on the other side. They're just running at each other with the weapons, and then they end up like swinging at each other. Or sorry, they're in ring left, and half the ring's the babyfaces, half the ring's the heels, and the babyfaces are running at the heels with weapons. Everybody's swinging at each other, and Bianca just grabs her braids and starts whipping with both halves. And I think they go up to the corner, and Bayley ends up grabbing one of Bianca's braids to use as a weapon. They do a bunch of spots into the weapons also. That's so sick. Eventually, Nia ends up taking the advantage until Team Babyfaces headbutts her to put her down. She takes her time waiting for the clock to count until Liv comes out, her being Rhea apparently. I can't write notes. Liv hesitates to get out of the cage, and then she ends up ultimately going backstage and grabbing the baseball bat that ended up breaking Rhea's orbital bone, kayfabe. She enters the ring with that, and the announcers say the Wargames begins. Raquel tries to save her from getting beat down, but Bianca ends up taking out Raquel. Rhea takes off her protective mask, which was so silly to do against a bat. I mean, like, you gotta have extra protection against some metal. Come on now. Anyway, it doesn't matter because she ducks the shot that Liv takes at her. She takes the advantage until Nia ends up taking her down, and Team Batty holds her down so that she can get beaten up in the rib cage, not in the face for some reason, with the bat. Rhea escapes Team Batty before she can get cuffed, though, so because they pull out a pair of handcuffs and try to put her in the corner. Raquel puts it on the corner, so you know what that means. Rule of thumb. They have a back and forth match where everybody just does signatures between the faces and heels. It ends with Bayley end up taking a I almost said a Samoa Joe. Let me try again. A Samoan drop for the 2 count. Io and Tiffany both climb up to the left and the right side of the cage to where the heels and faces go to the respective corners. Io ends up taking a trash can to her head, and she ends up doing a fucking moonsault with the trash can on her head at the same time. Coolest moment of the whole match. Honestly, Io's been MVP of the year in my opinion. Tiffany swantons the other corner at the same time, and you know what? That was sick. I need that in my intro too. Something I just want to comment on right here, because I haven't mentioned it yet, is that there's a lot of... I'm sorry, I don't want to be this guy because I hate dishing out, like, hate towards women matches. But I gotta call an ace an ace. There was a lot of sloppy spots throughout this match and through the men's Wargames that resulted in a lot of injuries, or, like, just small things went wrong to make people get injured. So you could see the hesitation Tiffany has, like, the second before she does the swanton. I appreciate that. She saved herself probably from injury there, so good job. Tiffany immediately gets up and gets the other trash can that was sitting down, where after pulling out a bunch of random gimmicks, she ends up pulling out her Money in the Bank in it, where the crowd pops major for it. So at this point, Michael Cole asks how this would work, and if it would work, and what would this mean. In my nerdy opinion, if we're following WWE rules already pre-existing, this couldn't work considering she's on the same team. If theoretically this were to work, that means either the match would be thrown out or her team would forfeit or loses by pinfall, unless they import a new rule stipulation because of something like this. But I don't know. It's just fun wrestling stuff to overthink. It doesn't matter because Raquel ends up getting her in her face and confronts her about, like, hey, you say you wouldn't do that during this match, blah blah blah, and Io ends up spraying everybody down with the fire hose, and she's just swinging for the fence. She don't care if she gets her teammate or not. She just creates a big cloud. During all that, Raquel falls back into the corner with the handcuffs on it, and Rhea saw it. She was there for enough time to end up handcuffing her. Raquel tries to beat her down, Rhea tries to beat down Raquel, but Nia ends up taking the advantage. Her and Tiffany pull out a table. They have a spot where everybody gets taken out on Team Goody by Nia. And Nia tries to pin Naomi, but Bayley and Io end up coming in the ring to save her. They stare down at each other for a bit, a nice throwback, if you will, to the fact that they used to be Damage Control members and then they feuded for the title and haven't really worked that out yet, have they? But yeah, they have a stare down until Nia gets up, takes her out. And then she ends up whipping Bianca with her own hair, saying, that doesn't feel good, does it? Or something like that. She puts her on the table and tries to annihilate Bianca on the table, but B moves off the table just in time, and her and Naomi end up, I think, powerbombing or suplexing or something, and puts Nia through the table somehow. They try to pin her and get a 2 count until Liv uses a baseball bat on everybody except for Bianca. Bianca ends up catching her bat and pulls it out of her hands. She ends up chasing Ring to the other Liv, yes. Until Raquel slides down the rope to big boot Bianca as she gets in the other ring. Liv gives Bayley an oblivion and tries to put Rhea up to do the same, but Rhea ends up pulling her off of it, I think. So I think she didn't connect with Bayley. But anyway, Rhea tries a riptide on Liv, but Raquel ends up kicking her because she's near that rope corner. After she gets beaten down a little bit by Liv, Liv gives Rhea a code breaker with the chair. Looked really sick, and they should have played that up about the orbital thing more, but you know what? Who am I? I'm just a mark. She puts the table in the corner, and mistake number 1, she put the table up, you know the rule of thumb, and she goes up and Rhea ends up getting off the table because she was prone on the table, and she ends up going up to the top. They have an exchange off the top for a bit. Liv tries for an oblivion, but Rhea ends up headbutting her and gives her a riptide through the table for her team to win. I think by this point Raquel was already taken out, so she couldn't really do anything to help. I wrote down, I realized they're going to feud for a bit. I really hope this turns into her feuding with Raquel to build her, or somebody else to create a story beat. I still agree. They should have gave... Like, I realize Saturday night's main event is like, what, a 2-hour long show? But I still think, like, Raquel should have had a match against Rhea or something like that, just to give her a little something, and maybe Rhea could eat a loss. I don't know. Just me. After commercial break that included an advertisement for Elimination Chamber where Cena is heavily advertised for it, we get one of those, this city is cool, look at all the things this city does segments. Then talk about how this is the 64th consecutive sellout for WWE, not including like live events and all that, which to me is crazy. That's over a year's worth of sellouts. Hell, I don't even know if maybe it included live events, but that's still crazy. 64 consecutive shows. We're almost at 100. Holy shit. After that, we get Shinsuke Nakamura versus LA Knight. Shinsuke was built. He looked like a fucking killer. I needed this version of Shinsuke. I'm so glad that I was so wrong on my prediction, because even though LA Knight got some offense in, thankfully Shinsuke dominated Knight during most of the match, and I am that much closer to getting Killer Nakamura back. Commentary ends up hyping up this new version of Shinsuke a lot. Nakamura ultimately wins with a Bomaye after dropping him in the middle of the ring, and no, to me it will never be a Kinshasa, no matter how much you try to enforce that. I love his new presentation and his new song and his celebration. He ends up putting the title in the middle of the mat and kind of like bows to it behind, which looks so badass. After a sponsor segment I refused to watch, we then have the match I was looking forward to, better known as Sheamus versus Kaiser versus Breaker, where honestly, the real winner is the fans. I just wrote down some highlights of it. Breaker ends up flying through the air to give Kaiser a shoulder block. He runs like around the ring first. It looks so crazy. He ends up hitting a Frankensteiner on Sheamus, then tries to give a spear that gets reversed into a chair, like thrown in the corner spot. And then he ends up being a bro kick for a 2 count because Kaiser basically costs Sheamus the match. He ends up pulling out the ref, and that's a big thing, like, oh, you cost me this title. They beat the shit out of each other, including Kaiser afterwards breaking Sheamus' shillelagh over his back, and Cole sells it great. He ends up like literally screaming out like, stop it, Sheamus is already down. Like, the freaking Michael Cole is so great at selling stories when he needs to. And this whole thing of like Sheamus not getting the Intercontinental title but still being mentioned in the mix until like Mania or Rumble, it's awesome story. I hope it ends eventually with Sheamus winning the title at Mania so he can retire as champion or something like that. That would work for me. But spoiler alert, Sheamus slowly gets up after that freaking shillelagh beatdown and gets thrown back into the ring. He slowly gets up and then he eats a spear from Braun Breaker to break everybody's heart. I wrote down this and I still believe it, but next year's going to look like a very historical Mania between the chances of like Sheamus finally getting the chance to retire as champion and between like John Cena coming back and having his final Mania. Like, this is built to be like a killer Mania, at least in my head, like the dream Mania I have built up for it. Fantasy booking aside though, after some ads, we have Priest versus Gunter. I hate to say it because I'm a big Gunter mark, but I completely forgot this was a match. There's a moment during this match where the shadow of Priest's boot made it look like Gunter had a beard, and I was so thrown off, but also like it kind of works for Gunter, so, you know, just throw that out there for some character development. Anyways, this is a normal like Gunter wrestling match, so nothing for me to complain about. The psychology for this match is that Gunter isn't fighting at his normal intensity because he thinks he could lose. Priest ends up tweaking his shoulder halfway through the match, and Gunter works on it through the rest of the match. Towards the end of the match, Priest gets tossed out of the ring. I think they were going for a spot off the top, and it looks like a sloppy accident that Priest ends up tumbling out of the ring. Finn ends up interfering and gives Priest a coup de grace off the steps. Gunter saw that and then boots Finn right in the face for that, and rolls Priest back into the ring, puts a chokehold on him, and Priest passes out for Gunter to regain. Gunter ends up staring down Finn and hugs his title. He doesn't even like confidently wear it after pulling it off his waist. He ends up hugging it and being like, no one else can touch this title. It's my title, you know? Really sells how insecure he feels about his title win. After a bunch of ads, they do the segment of the night, I think, which was a parody of football players being like, my name here, blank university. There was a bunch of them that were really good, like Yeet and No Yeet University. Then freaking my favorite one is Tama Tonga says that he had a doctorate in yeah. I really fucking love that shit. They advertised the Wargames main event, and then we get the siren, the cage drop, the big pyro going off. Dylan pops again for the night. They say the rules again, which are the same as last year, so again, no repeating. Then we get Bloodline 2 coming out with Bronson Reed. Solo sends out Tama Tonga to start the match for them, and Tom is like climbing around the cage looking like a madman when he scales it. The True Bloodline then comes out with each member getting their own entrance. Boo! I needed my OG Bloodline entrance with the Tribal Chiefs theme to really sell this. During Punk's entrance, he shoves Bronson in the cage and makes the whole like bloodline go for him, including Jacob Fatu freaking climbing the cage. It's weird that Punk and Roman came out third and second last, and Jay got the last spot, but also it makes sense considering this is very much so Jay's year, so it works for me. Roman stands right in front of the Bloodline 2.0's cage and soaks in the spotlight a little bit, like right in front of him, just to add to irritation. When Roman and Punk were in the cage together, Roman was side-eyeing Punk hard the whole time. Jay got his full entrance, which is wild, but also like understandable, you know, gotta get that pop. As far as the crowd's concerned, they yeeted, but it's definitely not the best, but also not the worst. I give it like a C ranking. Jay ends up starting the match for the OG Bloodline, so I get like my little tease of God versus the Usos, and I'll take it. I love that it took them like 2 minutes before either member ended up swinging for the team. That just soaked in the crowd for a bit. Like I just said, just kind of reiterate myself, I still need my God versus Usos battle, but you know what, I'll be patient for it. They were good at setting the beginning pace for the match. Fast forward a little bit, Bronson Reed comes in, and everybody dies on both teams, honestly. Like, the teams don't matter. He's just going to kill people. He introduces some chairs just for fun, and when he comes in the ring, Jay ends up sabooing him with all the chairs. That was freaking crazy to see. Reed ends up taking him down at the end and ultimately beats him up. The baddies hold the advantage for a bit until Jimmy comes down and helps his brother out. He hits a whisper in the wind, which was wild, and then he ends up helping his brother up. They double team everybody for a little bit to get the advantage. Fast forward and Jacob Fatu comes out. They try to jump him off the bat, but he's too much for them. Baddies beat up the good guys. Fast forward a little bit and Punk tries to go out, but Roman sticks his arm out blocking him. He holds onto the cage to make sure he doesn't get past him, and Sammy ends up going. They have a little confrontation about that for a bit, and Sammy ends up hitting like the reverse, I call it the reverse ass bump springboard, where he's like takes a springboard but literally hits him with his ass. I love that, and I don't think I've seen that spot probably since like NXT call-up era. I love that. And then he does the child stomps in the middle, which I love that spot too, so 8 out of 10 Sammy. He tries to springboard into Jacob. Jacob ends up catching him, but Jimmy ends up super kicking him, so that way they have the advantage. Sammy ends up hugging Jimmy because he saved him on that, and they keep on clearing the ring for a little bit. The faces have the advantage until Tongaloa comes out. He looks for weapons. He ends up finding a table. That makes 2 tables, actually. He ends up finding 2 tables. The Hills take out the goodies, including a split-legged moonsault by good old Jacob Fatu, and my pop of the night, I ended up seeing a freaking gorilla roll. Hell yeah. Fast forward, and Roman wanted to get in the ring, but Punk ends up shoulder blocking him last second and steps in front of him and ends up going to the ring to find a toolbox. He wears out everybody with the toolbox, gives them all knees in the corner, and then he gives Jacob Fatu a running bulldog onto the toolbox, but somebody forgot to tell him that he is in a ring with Samoans, and Samoan 101 for wrestling is that you don't try to hit them in the head or use their heads as a weapon. etc., because they're all made of titanium and can absorb everything. That's right, Jacob no-sells it, does the Umaga like pop-up where he slaps himself, and then takes the advantage, the baddies do. Solo ends up coming out, he takes his time and taunts Roman in the other cage. He shoves the cage door into Sammy, Jay, and Jimmy's head individually. Bad guys take him out with God hitting Nightfall. Jacob moonsaults onto the Usos, and Reed gives Sammy a tsunami. Everybody beats down Punk. Solo locks the door so that when Roman's time comes up, ultimately, he can't enter it. All is lost until Roman remembers, oh yeah, I can climb. He climbs the second ring, knocking down God as they're trying to catch him before he gets into the ring. And then he ends up, like, nutting Bronson Reed onto the top rope. I hope that made sense. That sounds so weird, but, like, he ends up roping him in the nuts. He knocks down Jacob and takes out Solo until he jumps from the top rope onto all of them. So, could you imagine the original spot being him jumping from the top and he just said, brother, that doesn't work for me. He cleans them all out like a house of fire. He helps up everybody not named CM Punk on his team, and Punk confronts him afterwards about that. But it's okay. Heyman runs out and tells them that they have to get along, and this is Wargames, and they have to agree with each other. Then the announcer says, let the Wargames begin afterwards. It's such a wrestling logic, but it was a really cool moment seeing Paul Heyman like hype him up like that. I appreciated that. We get a face-off between the teams real quick. One's on one ring, one's on the other ring, and I love that shit. The Usos gave a stereo splash to God after beating them down, and Solo and Jacob take out Punk and Roman in a separate ring. They end up fighting back and forth until miscommunication happens, where Punk has Jacob up for the GTS and Roman tries to spear Solo, but Solo moves the last second and he ends up spearing Punk. The baddies take over until Jacob hits a fly. He sells that he's injured, like he's grabbing his knee even though it's kayfabe. After the baddies beat down Team Goodies for a bit, they have Jacob grab Roman, but Roman ends up low blowing Jacob. He spears Solo, and Reed just super kicks him afterwards. Reed goes up, puts him on a table, and goes up for a super tsunami off the top, but Punk pulls Reigns off the table last second, and dear Lord, this is where Reed breaks his ankle. I didn't see it live. I was like, oh, what happened? But somebody, don't go out of your way to watch this. Somebody had a slow motion video of where Reed's like camera left ankle ends up going, and you can literally see it fold in on itself. You're like, oh God. Roman assesses what happened, then helps up and down CM Punk until Jacob takes them all out. Superman punch ends up taking Jacob out until Solo spikes Roman and gets double super kicked by the Usos. Everybody eats a move for a bit, including a correctly done 1D this year. Shout out to the Usos for actually knowing how to do their move. They do it for Jacob. I popped because 1D is awesome, especially when done correctly. They try to splash him onto the table. Everyone attempts to save him after a brief finisher spam. Jimmy goes to the top of the cage and ends up splashing Jacob to break his toe. That's right, this whole show is injury prone. I think like 5 to 7 people end up getting injured in this match. Not like this specific match, sorry, throughout the whole card. After Sammy helps everybody up, they go to the second ring where everybody ends up surrounding each other. After that, Team Baddies basically taken out throughout all that, except for Solo. They go to the second ring where all the good guys surround Solo and give him a special. Punk ends up hitting him with the GTS, and Reigns ends up hitting him with the spear for the win. They all hug each other, minus Roman. He kind of sits in his own corner. We get replays, and then Punk and Roman have a stare down. They eventually shake hands, and they all pose together as Michael Cole tells a story, saying essentially this was a win for the OG Bloodline, but Solo is still the head of the table. They all leave as Punk does. He whispers, like as they leave, Paul sees them all and like hugs them all, and then Punk hugs him for a bit and he whispers in Paul's ear saying, don't forget you owe me a favor, and when I need that favor, I'm getting it. To which Paul agrees. I can't wait to figure out what that favor is. This is great long-term storytelling. As Roman comes out of the ring, Paul does his little bow as Roman taunts, and Roman comes up to him and lets him know he's accepted back by giving him a little rub behind the ear. They all walk up the ramp together, and at the end it shows Roman hugging Jimmy and smiling. I guess like that was non-kayfabe, him being like, yeah, it's alright. and then they end up all posing with the ones up, and Punk does his little like go to sleep hand motion, and that's how we end the show. Honestly, killer fucking pay-per-view. Not as nostalgic as last year's, but also to be fair, last year literally had CM Punk return and Randy Orton return in one night. How can you top that? I still loved it. Keep up the good shit, WWE. I appreciate it. Hey, so, editing Dylan here. I don't know how good I was at hiding it or not throughout the review, but I was sick when I recorded that, like, last week. It's taken a week to heal up from that. Like I always say, something in life ends up interrupting things. Today's Monday. Usually these will be uploaded Saturdays. I meant to do it this last Saturday. Something sickness took me out. So this will be uploaded today. I'm going to try my best to upload Saturday night's main event from 2008 and 2024 throughout the week. With that being said, I'm also going to try to upload old Raws and old SmackDown like I keep on teasing. But I just realized Peacock's only got old Raws and SmackDowns up for like 15 more days, so I might have to address that. Anyways, today's Monday, so stay tuned either for Old Raw Episode 3, like an old Raw review, or just one of the PLEs that I've missed. Anyways, bye!